I could have been like the protagonist in any other rebirth story and tried to rekindle things with my ex-wife. But the moment I realized she had been reborn too, my gut reaction was to pull away. I no longer had any attachment to the past, and frankly, I was relieved I wouldn't have to get tangled up with her again. What truly broke her was the realization that her years of arrogance meant nothing to me anymore. Some love, once it's gone, can never come back. My wife and I were reborn on the very day we were supposed to get married. Walking out of City Hall, we were completely silent. Neither of us ever mentioned the word marriage again. She chose to run off with her college senior to chase the freedom she'd always dreamed of. I, on the other hand, threw myself into my work. We went down completely different paths. 7 years later, she was a nationally recognized travel blogger, an icon of freedom for countless women who admired her. When I saw her again, I was still just grinding away, running my company. She sat in her boyfriend's luxury car, looking me over with a mocking smirk as I biked to work. "After all these years of work, you still can't even afford a car," she taunted. I just pretended I didn't hear her. It wasn't until the woman considered a goddess by men all over the country threw herself into my arms and called me her husband that she finally stormed up to me. "James," she demanded, "how could you marry someone else? A man like you isn't worth marrying, James." Hearing Hannah's voice again felt like listening to a ghost from another life. Seeing me just standing there, stunned, she frowned in annoyance and waved a hand in front of my face. "This time," she declared, "even if your parents begged me on their deathbeds, I would never, ever marry you." I snapped out of it and gave a silent nod. "Fine, whatever you say." A flicker of surprise showed in her eyes when I agreed so readily. "You'd better mean it, James. Don't come crawling back to me. I have no intention of suffering through 10 miserable years with you again. I'm supposed to be a modern woman who lives for herself, but I was trapped in the prison of marriage for a decade." Hannah glared at me, her voice dripping with bitterness. "This time, I'm going to be the star of my own life, and I won't betray Ethan's love again." The moment she said it, she spun around and hurried away, her back radiating a sense of relief and happiness. As I watched her elegant figure disappear, it merged with the image of the woman from my memories. It looked like Hannah had been reborn, too. In our past life, on the day we went to get married, Hannah wore a simple white blouse, her long, straight black hair falling casually over her shoulders. She was understated, almost plain, but something about her struck a chord deep inside me. I couldn't get her out of my head for over a decade. We were classmates in high school, and even back then, I had this inexplicable feeling for her. When the chance to marry her came along, I thought it was destiny. I didn't even care that we had no real emotional connection. After all, people aren't made of stone. I was convinced that if I just treated her with genuine kindness, I would eventually win her over. It was only after we were married that I realized how laughably naive I'd been. Hannah was cold and distant, treating me with a politeness that was more formal than how you treat a stranger. At first, I just assumed that was her personality. It wasn't until much later that I learned she had always been in love with someone else. That someone was Ethan, a senior from her college days. He was her first love. In college, Ethan and Hannah had been inseparable. He was smart and handsome. She was beautiful, and everyone said they were a perfect match. The problem was, Ethan came from a modest background and had gotten into some trouble in his youth. Even though he had cleaned up his act and was doing well, it wasn't enough for her parents. In the eyes of her parents, the Millers, he would never be good enough for their daughter. He was completely unacceptable as a potential son-in-law. So, even when Hannah pleaded and cried, even when she threatened to take her own life, Mr. and Mrs. Miller wouldn't budge. They absolutely refused to approve the marriage. In the end, under immense pressure from her parents, Hannah gave in. She chose her family. She compromised, and she married me. And Ethan became her first love, the one she could never have, a thorn permanently lodged in her heart. In our past life, I didn't meet Ethan until my 10th year of marriage to Hannah. It was Thanksgiving, and I had been rushed to the hospital with a bleeding ulcer from a work dinner. Hannah brought me some bland soup from home, but the moment she walked into my hospital room, she was completely distracted. She kept glancing at her phone, her eyes filled with anxiety. I managed to push myself up in bed and asked, "Hannah, is something wrong?" She shot me an irritated look. "Don't call me that," she snapped. I froze, stunned by the ice in her voice. I knew she wasn't fond of me, but she had never spoken to me with such cold, harsh distance before. Her cold gaze felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Hannah seemed to realize she'd gone too far, because her expression softened slightly. "Just eat the soup. I have something I need to take care of." With that, she turned and walked out without another word. I just stared at the empty doorway, unable to even ask her to stay. I didn't understand why she had been acting so strangely until later, when I saw her with my own eyes, clinging to Ethan's arm and refusing to let go. "For my family, I gave up almost 10 years of my life," she sobbed. "I pushed away my true love. Ethan, can't you just look at me? I missed you so much." Ethan let out a long, weary sigh. "Hannah, you're a married woman," he said, "and I'm a public figure now. If anyone saw us like this, think about the scandal it would cause." "I don't care." Hannah bit her lip, fighting back tears, her eyes turning red. "If I divorced him, would you take me back?" Ethan yanked his arm away, his voice suddenly like ice. "I'm a travel blogger with millions of followers. I can have any woman I want. Hannah, take a good look at yourself. Why would I want a worn-out housewife like you? It's been 10 years. I've been traveling the world, living freely, while you've been stuck in the mundane routine of daily life. We don't even see the world the same way anymore." After that, something in Hannah just snapped. She convinced herself that I was the sole reason Ethan had rejected her. Her resentment spiraled out of control, and she started selling my company's secrets behind my back. She used the money for gym memberships and beauty treatments, desperately trying to reclaim everything she felt the 10-year marriage had stolen from her. But no matter what she did, no matter how much she tried to improve her appearance, Ethan never gave her a second glance. Finally, on the day of Ethan's wedding, Hannah drugged me and set our room on fire, intending for us to die together. The searing heat of the flames jolted me awake. Through the haze, I heard her screaming, completely unhinged. "This is all your fault. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have wasted 10 years as a frumpy housewife. Ethan wouldn't despise me now. All I could do was give a bitter laugh." She blamed me for everything, conveniently forgetting that she was the one who had agreed to the marriage in the first place. She could have stood up to her overbearing, controlling parents. What exactly was my mistake in all of this? A sudden gust of wind scattered the clouds, and the sun broke through, warming my skin and clearing my head in an instant. This rebirth, it had to be a second chance, a gift. This time, I couldn't afford to waste it. From that day forward, Hannah and I had an unspoken agreement to stay out of each other's lives. The only problem was our wedding was scheduled for the next month, and this sudden breakup was met with fierce opposition from her parents. At first, I was worried about how I'd explain the situation to our friends and family. But Hannah made it easy. She showed up at her parents' house with Ethan and, in front of everyone, demanded to switch grooms. The stunt was so rebellious it nearly gave her father, Mr. Miller, a stroke from the rage. But Hannah didn't care. "You always try to force your decisions on me," she yelled. "Before I'm your daughter, I'm my own person. I have a right to choose my own life. Even if you drop dead right here in front of me, I would still choose Ethan." The words were barely out of her mouth before Mr. Miller, livid, lunged at her. He ended up collapsing and being rushed away in an ambulance. The whole chaotic scene, at least, saved me the trouble of having to explain the canceled wedding to everyone. People looked at me with a mixture of pity and sympathy, but I didn't have the time or energy to worry about Hannah and the Millers. A second chance at life is rare. The most important thing was to focus on making money. In my past life, it took me 5 or 6 years to get my company off the ground. Things were finally looking up when Hannah sold my trade secrets, and the business collapsed overnight. But now, I was a full decade ahead of the game. There was no way I was going to miss my chance to build it all back, bigger and better. Besides, 10 years ago, the internet boom hadn't even started yet. The real gold rush was still to come. All I had to do was position myself correctly, and when the market took off, I'd never have to worry about money again. With that in mind, I dove headfirst into my work. I was so busy I barely had time to breathe, so I was surprised to get a call from Hannah. For the past few years, she and Ethan have been very public about their relationship, constantly posting couple photos all over their social media. But the Hannah on the phone sounded like a complete mess. "James, why didn't you help my dad find a doctor?" she demanded. "You knew he was sick." I couldn't help but laugh. In my past life, this was when Hannah's fighting with her family had caused Mr. Miller's blood pressure to skyrocket, leading to congestive heart failure. The moment I heard, I pulled every string I could to get him the best specialist in the state and scheduled his surgery. After a lot of stress and effort, we managed to pull him through. But through it all, Hannah never once said thank you. She just assumed I was doing it to make her feel indebted to me, to hold it over her head. So this time, I decided to stay out of it completely. And now, hearing her trying to blame me over the phone, I found the whole thing absurdly amusing. "Hannah, weren't you the one who told me to leave you alone?" I asked. "We're broken up. Why on earth would I be responsible for taking care of your parents? The nerve you have." Then I hung up and blocked her number. I heard later that because of the delay in getting treatment, Mr. Miller's condition got worse. He was left with permanent damage, including slurred speech. 7 years flew by. In that time, I leveraged every advantage my foreknowledge gave me. I went all in on new media, and my company grew into an industry titan. I made a fortune. Tonight was our high school reunion, and a lot of the old crew showed up. I spotted Hannah right away. Naturally, Ethan was right there with her. Someone recognized her and jumped up. Well, if it isn't our big star," another classmate chimed in. "Hannah, I watch your videos all the time. I'm so jealous. Traveling all over the world must be amazing." Hannah gave a small, practiced smile. "Oh, it's just my job," she said modestly. "But I do hope that every woman can find the strength to escape the cage of marriage, like I did, and live a life of freedom. Anyway, drinks are on me tonight, so everyone have a good time." As soon as she said it, a group of our old female classmates started fawning over her, treating her like some kind of deity. I glanced up at the spectacle for a moment, then went back to my food. I hadn't eaten much for lunch, so I was actually hungry. In my past life, I completely wrecked my health chasing my career, and the stomach pain was unbearable. I've been extremely careful this time around. That's a kind of suffering I never want to experience again. I was about to reach for another serving when a shadow fell over my plate. I looked up to see Hannah standing there, holding a glass of wine with a saccharine smile. "James, all you're doing is eating. I guess it's been a while since you've had a meal this nice, huh?" "Then again, I saw you riding a bike to work the other day," she continued. "It's kind of pathetic, really." As she spoke, she pulled a debit card from her purse and flicked it onto the table. It landed with a soft thud right in my bowl of soup. "Oh, whoops," she said with fake surprise. "I just felt so bad seeing how you're struggling. I wanted to help you out. Now I've gotten soup all over it. Don't worry, it'll still work. The PIN is 666666. There's $10,000 on it. Just a little something to help you get by." This whole performance was because she'd seen me biking to work a few days ago. She had been sitting in Ethan's fancy car, looking down at me through the window with pure disgust. "Wow, James," she'd said, "I'm so glad I didn't end up with you. I'd be right back to being a miserable housewife. After all these years, you still can't even afford a car." I couldn't help but laugh. 7 years, Hannah, and you're still as charming as ever. Her expression soured instantly. In our past life, she always complained that I wasn't successful enough to give her the life she wanted. But if it hadn't been for her and her leeching family, I wouldn't have lost everything, including the house my parents left me. Hannah's parents, the Millers, were controlling and selfish. They raised her to be elite, which was just a nice way of saying they were grooming her to marry into wealth. After my parents died and left me a sizable inheritance, they saw me as the perfect target. They pushed relentlessly for Hannah and me to get married, showering me with attention and concern. They completely manipulated me into thinking that all of Hannah's demanding behavior was just her strict way of showing she cared. It wasn't until after I died that I overheard them complaining. James's inheritance wasn't nearly as much as we thought, her mother had said. "It's useless. He couldn't even buy a house for David. David was Hannah's younger brother. Every time that kid ran out of money, he'd demand more from Hannah, and if she refused, he'd just start screaming at her. It bothered me, of course, but I always kept my mouth shut. I figured life was hard on her too, and back then, I still thought of us as a family. But to them, I was nothing more than a walking ATM. This time around, having cut ties with those bloodsuckers, I'm living a much better life. Hannah's little speech made everyone at the table uncomfortable. They exchanged awkward glances before turning to me with pity in their eyes. Someone even whispered, "If you had married her, you'd be the one living the good life now." I looked at Hannah and laughed. "Hannah, $10,000 wouldn't even cover the cost of my watch. What's this I hear about you trying to sign with Peak Media? Planning a move into acting?" My secretary had mentioned a few days ago that a travel blogger with a huge following wanted to transition into acting. I never imagined it was her. I pulled out my phone right there and called my secretary. "That blogger, Hannah Miller," I said. "Cancel the meeting. We're not interested." Ethan burst out laughing. "Hannah, is your ex-fiancé drunk? Does he have any idea what kind of company Peak Media is? Who does he think he is? The owner's wife is the youngest actress to ever win a major award. Does he really think he's in their league? Besides," he added with a sneer, "everyone knows the owner of Peak Media is named James, but it's definitely not this James." Ethan looked me up and down with a condescending glare. "Look, James, I know you're a loser, but you don't have to be a liar too." Hannah's voice was low, her face a mask of disappointment. "I really was wrong about you." She didn't give me a chance to explain. She just turned and walked away with Ethan to another table. Suddenly, all eyes in the room were on me. I could feel their mockery, their pity, their cold judgment. I ignored them and glanced down at my phone. A new iMessage had just popped up from Ava. "Hey honey, my car's still in the shop. I might be a little late picking you up." To the public, Ava is the ultimate professional, a powerhouse actress who wins awards for nearly every role she takes. With her flawless talent and stunning looks, the media calls her America's sweetheart. But only I know how affectionate and clingy she can be in private. Ava often tells me that I'm her one and only true love. We met 5 years ago. Back then, she was a struggling actress taking bit parts, and I had just used my second chance to start my own media company. Ava was passionate about acting, but with no connections or family in the business. She had a tough road ahead of her. A sweet, genuine person like her could easily be taken advantage of in that industry. I first met her at an industry party where some producer was trying to get her drunk, and I suspected he'd put something in her drink. She could barely stand. I couldn't just watch it happen, especially since I remembered from my past life that she had struggled for almost a decade before finally getting her big break. I thought that if someone had just given her a chance earlier, she wouldn't have had to go through so much. So I approached her with a business proposition, an investment in her career, and started to help guide her. Ava didn't let me down. Her very first leading role was a massive box office hit. From that point on, her career skyrocketed. She didn't have a single flop. She once told me I was the one who discovered her, and that I was her soulmate. 5 years after we met, Ava won her 4th major acting award. During her acceptance speech, she announced to the world that we were married. We had a small, private wedding shortly after. I've never been one for the spotlight, and I didn't want our private life to be picked apart by the public. Very few people know who the real owner of Peak Media is, so it was no surprise that Hannah had no idea. Thinking of Ava made me smile. We hadn't seen each other in a while, and I was starting to miss her. I sent her a text back. "I miss you too. Honey, I know you've been cooped up and want to get away for a bit. We can leave as soon as you get here. Louise can handle things at the office." I slipped my phone back into my pocket. Just then, Hannah was back in front of me. "James, do you know something?" she demanded. "Peak Media just contacted me and canceled our meeting." "Who exactly are you?" I laughed. "Me? I'm just a regular guy who rides a bike to work because he can't afford a car. How could I possibly have any influence on your career?" Hannah visibly relaxed, clearly believing me. "You're right," she said, relieved. "Someone like you could never have any connection to a company like Peak Media. I can't believe I actually fell for your bluff." She muttered to herself. Then, realizing she'd been a bit too harsh, she shot me another glare. Look, James, I'm not trying to put you down, but you're 30 years old and you still can't afford a car. You're commuting on a rental bike. You were at the top of our class. How did you let yourself fall so far? She adopted a patronizing, I'm just trying to help tone. Do you really want your wife to be stuck at home, turning into some frumpy housewife? That's not just irresponsible, it's disrespectful to women. Looking at her, I knew exactly what she was doing. She was projecting, trying to get revenge for the slights she imagined she suffered in our past life. But was it really that simple? In our past life, after she and Ethan were forced to separate, she became a recluse. She never left the house, never did a single chore, and expected to be waited on hand and foot. The allowance I gave her each month either went straight to her parents or to her brother, David. Eventually, she started blaming me for everything. It was my fault she wasn't a wealthy socialite with a staff of maids, cleaners, and a personal driver. And now, she had the audacity to claim that I was the one who forced her into the life of a worn-out housewife. The irony was staggering. I finished my wine in one swallow, done wasting my breath on her. With someone like Hannah, the sky could be falling and she'd still find a way to blame me for it. I was about to fire back a response when the door to our private room swung open and my friend Luis walked in. He scanned the room, his eyes quickly landing on me. Well, James, he said with a grin. Hiding out at a high school reunion without me? I was a little surprised. How did you know I was here? Who told you? Luis rolled his eyes. You told me you were having dinner in my hotel on Saturday, remember? Guess your mind is only on business these days. I frowned as a vague memory surfaced. I think I did mention it offhand, but I'd completely forgotten. Okay, you got me, I said, giving him a light punch on the shoulder. But what are you doing here? Luis shrugged. Mr. Peterson is in town, so I had to come down to greet him personally. Figured I'd stop by and see you while I was here. Anyway, I won't bother you. I'm actually here with my girlfriend. Just wanted to say hi. Oh, by the way, I heard Ava's almost done with her shoot. Maybe she and my girlfriend can hang out sometime? I've been swamped lately. I was about to answer when Hannah, who had been standing there awkwardly, cut in. James, who is this? I decided to be helpful. Hannah, this is Luis. He's the head of Peak Media. You know, the company you were trying to sign with. I then pointed a thumb at Hannah. She's the one I told my secretary to cancel on. Luis's eyes widened in understanding. Oh, he said, just as his phone started ringing. Excuse me, I have to take this, he said, and stepped out of the room. The moment he was gone, Hannah shot me a look of pure contempt. Wow, James, you're really that desperate for attention, aren't you? You see that I'm successful, so you hire some actor to try and make me jealous. It just makes me despise you even more, and it makes me even happier that I didn't marry you 7 years ago. She let out a cold laugh. The head of Peak Media? Do you think we're idiots? You heard someone mention the owner's name, so you hired some random guy to put on a show? It's not just pathetic, it's embarrassing. Hannah spoke just loud enough for her little clique of admirers to hear, and they quickly joined in. Come on, James, we're all friends here, one of them said with a sneer. There's no need for all this drama. Another added, yeah, Hannah and Ethan are perfect for each other. You're just being jealous and trying to ruin things. If you ask me, Hannah made the right call not marrying you. A third one piped up. She'd never be this successful if she was stuck with you. Ethan, basking in the praise, seemed to stand a little taller. He walked over and clapped me on the shoulder. Hey, James, if you're interested, my company is hiring a security guard. It's $7,000 a month, room and board included. Better than riding that bike to work every day, right? A fresh wave of oohs and ahs went through the group. Wow, Ethan, that's so generous. Yeah, James, you should thank him. Ethan, you're the man. Hey, Ethan, any other openings at your company? Their fawning was getting so ridiculous, I finally had a laugh. I leaned back in my chair and looked around at them. Ethan, I said casually, I hear you started your own little media company. So why are you so desperate to get Hannah a deal with Peak? Can't afford to support her anymore? Or is your business about to go belly up? Ethan's face went rigid. He glanced around, saw everyone was staring at him, and quickly tried to control his anger. Don't talk nonsense, James, he snapped. My company is doing just fine. Why would you wish for it to fail? I just looked at him, my expression turning cold. My secretary had already done a full background check on them. I knew the real reason Ethan was so desperate for Hannah to sign with Peak. His company's cash flow was a disaster, and they were drowning in debt. Sure, Hannah had made a name for herself as a travel blogger. She'd built a solid following with her whole independent woman, living free brand. But there are only so many ways to monetize that. And since they both spent money like it was water, their income depended entirely on sponsorships and live streaming revenue. The moment her content quality started to slip, she started losing followers. Now her account is on the verge of being suspended. They were counting on a deal with Peak to turn things around. But it looked like I had just closed that door for them. Seeing Hannah and Ethan on the defensive, a few of their sycophants jumped in. "You're just bitter, James. You can't stand to see other people succeed," one of them shouted. "Yeah, you should apologize to Ethan right now." With everyone on his side, Ethan's confidence returned. He lifted his chin and looked down his nose at me. "James," he said magnanimously, "for old time's sake, if you apologize right now, we can just forget this whole thing ever happened." I just laughed. "Apologize to you? You got to be kidding me." My sharp reply made every head in the room turn. A low murmur of whispers started to spread. I couldn't care less. Just then, the door opened again. This time it was my wife. She looked stunning in an elegant dress, her dark hair falling softly around her shoulders. She had an aura that was both pure and radiant. Ava's reputation preceded her. The moment she stepped into the room, people recognized her. "Oh my God, are you Ava? The award-winning actress, Ava," someone gasped. "Wow, I can't believe you're here. I'm a huge fan. Can I get a picture? I love your work. What's an A-list actress doing in a place like this?" Someone else whispered. "She must be here to see Hannah." Only someone with her connections could get Ava to show up. Ava was quickly surrounded, but she handled it with grace, responding politely to everyone while her eyes scanned the room, looking for me. With the crowd, she didn't spot me in the corner right away. "Miss Monroe," Hannah said, stepping forward and lifting her chin like a proud swan. "You may not remember me, but we met at Peak Media. I'm about to sign with them. You told me I had a lot of potential." The whispers started again. Wow. Imagine being able to just run into someone like Ava. If Ava herself said she has potential, Hannah's definitely going to be a huge star. Hearing this, Hannah's smile grew even more self-satisfied. But Ava just frowned, looking at her with a puzzled expression. "I'm sorry, who are you? I don't believe we've met. I've been on a closed set for the past few months, so I think you must have me confused with someone else." The room went dead silent. I couldn't help it. I started to laugh. In the sudden quiet, the sound was jarring. Ava's eyes lit up at the familiar sound. She pushed through the small crowd, and the moment she saw me, she threw her arms around my neck. "Honey," she said, "I missed you." Her embrace was like a bomb going off in the room. Everyone stared, their jaws on the floor. Ethan was the first to recover. He rushed forward. "Miss Monroe, how can he be your husband? I thought your husband was the head of Peak Media. That guy Luis?" Ava's warm expression instantly turned to ice. "I don't need anyone to tell me who my husband is," she said coldly. "Luis is a partner at Peak. He handles public relations." And she turned back to me, playfully pinching my cheek. "My husband's a bit of a homebody," she said to the room. "He hates the spotlight. If I hadn't dragged him out to this reunion tonight, who knows when my fans would have finally gotten to see how handsome he is." Her fans are a pretty rational bunch. They're more interested in her work than her private life. Most of them know she's had someone supporting her behind the scenes all these years. They even have a nickname for me online. I'm just a private person and never wanted to make a big public announcement. It took me a while to come around, but I eventually agreed to make our relationship public. Right now, Hannah was just staring, completely stunned by our display of affection. She stumbled forward. "James, how could you marry someone else?" She stammered. "Why didn't you tell me you owned Peak Media? Were you just playing games with us this whole time?" Ava's words had confirmed everything. Even if they thought Luis was an actor I'd hired, there was no way a star of Ava's caliber would risk her entire reputation just to help me play a prank. Listening to Hannah's endless questions was just irritating. "Hannah, I told you Peak wasn't interested. I said, my patience wearing thin. If I had known it was you, I never would have even scheduled the initial meeting. And as for why I married someone else, it's simple. I love Ava, and she loves me. I don't believe you. You're lying. Hannah completely lost control, her voice rising to a shriek. How could you be successful? You were supposed to be a failure for the rest of your life. You're a liar. You could barely support me back then. How could you possibly be the owner of Peak Media now? I don't believe it. Ava's expression hardened. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to stop, she said, her voice firm. I know exactly what kind of man my husband is, and he would never, ever be interested in someone as bitter and cruel as you. Oh, wait. Now I remember who you are, Ava continued, her eyes narrowing. You're the one who preached about finding your freedom by abandoning your sick parents, stealing the money for your father's treatment, and running off with another man. If that's what you call freedom, I call it selfish and hypocritical. Ava had a sharp tongue, and she didn't pull any punches. Her words left Hannah pale and speechless. Just then, the door to the room swung open again. Hannah's eyes went wide. Mom? Dad? What are you doing here? Her cry made everyone turn to the door. How did you even know I was here? Hannah stared at the elderly couple in the doorway. It had been 7 years, and they looked like they had aged 20. Her mother's once perfectly styled hair was now almost completely white, and she was rail thin. Hannah was completely bewildered as to why her parents were there. But before she could ask another question, her mother, Mrs. Miller, slapped her hard across the face. You heartless girl, she screamed. How dare you ask why we're here? You took the money for your father's surgery and ran off with this man. You've been living your happy life, but did you ever once stop to think about us? About whether we were alive or dead? What did I do to deserve a daughter like you? Ava had been right on the money. When Hannah had run off to find her freedom, she'd taken the money set aside for her father's medical care. As a result, Mr. Miller's condition had worsened, leaving him partially paralyzed. Her brother, David, was a good-for-nothing who refused to work. Mrs. Miller had to take a job washing dishes just to make ends meet. Meanwhile, Hannah had transformed herself into a successful influencer with over 1 million followers. Years ago, Hannah had blocked all of her family's numbers. Seeing her daughter standing there, speechless, Mrs. Miller slapped her again. Look at us, she shrieked. And then look at you. Nice house, fancy car. You look like you haven't had a single worry in your life. She then kicked the back of Hannah's knees, forcing her to the ground. Mom, I know I was wrong, Hannah cried, clutching her cheek, her eyes filled with hate. But if you hadn't always favored David, would any of this have happened? You know, Mrs. Miller, I added coolly, Hannah's a big-time influencer now. She's making a lot of money. I'm sure you'll be living comfortably very soon. Mrs. Miller didn't seem to care that people were now recording the scene on their phones. She hit Hannah again. You vanished for 7 years without a word, and now you show up bringing disaster. You'd better buy your brother a house and a car, or I swear I'll make you regret the day you were born. Everyone loves a good scandal, her mother continued. If you don't start acting like a proper daughter, I'll tell the whole world every dirty little secret you have, and we'll see how long you stay an influencer then. Mom, you can't. Hannah started, but was cut off by another slap. Shut up, you useless baggage. I watched the whole ugly scene unfold. Then I pointed at Ethan. Is this the great judgment you're so proud of, Hannah? I asked. Is this the freedom you were chasing? The man you've been in love with for a decade is just standing there, watching you get hit, and he hasn't said a single word to defend you. My words seemed to jolt Ethan into action, but his half-hearted attempt to intervene only confirmed what I already knew. The man had no backbone whatsoever. In our past life, Ethan had used the excuse of chasing freedom to convince Hannah to cut ties with her family and run away with him. What no one knew was that he had only gotten close to her in the first place because he was after her parents' money. But when he found out about her spoiled younger brother, who had been treated like a king his entire life, he couldn't handle the fact that his girlfriend would always have to put her brother first. So he cut his losses and left. This time, however, Hannah was the one who came to him with a pile of cash. She used her knowledge of the future to quickly build a brand as a successful female entrepreneur, making money and catering to Ethan's every desire. A spineless opportunist like him would never have stuck around for so long otherwise. Hannah completely ignored Ethan's cowardice. Instead, my words seemed to set her off. She whipped her head around to glare at me. "You called my mother, didn't you, James?" she hissed. "You're a monster. You're just trying to destroy my happiness." I had to laugh. "Don't play the victim, Hannah. Your mother showing up here is between the two of you. It has nothing to do with me. And besides, she has a point. They're your parents. They raised you. In our past life, more than half of the money we worked so hard to earn went straight to her family. I remember when I was in the hospital, I couldn't even afford my own medical bills. I had to swallow my pride and ask her for help. Her family didn't seem to be hurting for cash, so I gently suggested that maybe we could cut back on how much we gave them just to have a little for emergencies. In response, she rolled her eyes. "James, they're my parents," she'd snapped. "They're old. They deserve to be comfortable. You're young. If you get sick, just take some medicine. Don't be so dramatic. It's just a little money," she'd added. "Don't be so cheap." She was so self-righteous, acting as if her parents were destitute and I owed them something. But now that she was the one earning the money, she'd suddenly become incredibly stingy with them. She complained endlessly about giving them $1,000 a month for living expenses. It was the definition of a double standard. Hannah's face went from white to red. "I'll take care of my parents," she insisted. "But you shouldn't have called my mother here, James. You just wanted to humiliate me." She was completely convinced it was my doing. Nothing I could say would change her mind. In her world, I was the villain. I was done arguing. I took Ava's hand to lead her away. There was no point in making a bigger scene in front of all these people. But Ava stopped and gently pulled her hand from mine. I turned to see her standing directly in front of Hannah, a wry smile on her face. "It's Miss Miller, right?" she said. "I have no idea why you're so convinced my husband is out to get you. But let me give you a piece of advice, woman to woman. When you build your public image that high, it's a long way to fall. James and I have been married for almost 3 years," Ava continued, "and he is nothing like the man you described." Her words were a clear and direct defense of me. The same people who had been mocking me moments before suddenly crowded around. Their tone completely changed. I knew James would do well for himself. He was the smartest guy in our class, one said. "Hey, James, we go way back," said another. "Your company wouldn't happen to be hiring, would it?" I never believed a word Hannah said. "By the way," someone else added quickly, "I was just being polite. Don't take it personally." Listening to them all backtrack and try to get on my good side was nauseating. One minute, they were tearing me down to suck up to Hannah, and the next they were acting like my best friends. I had no time for their hypocrisy. I took Ava's hand, and we started to leave. We made it all the way to the elevators before Hannah caught up, breathless, and blocked our path. She stood there, biting her lip. "James," she said, her voice trembling, "why are you so successful this time? You were supposed to end up with nothing." I stopped and turned to face her. "Because this time," I said, enunciating every word, "I married Ava. She loves me, and she's a good person. She wouldn't claim to be hung up on her first love while forcing her husband to sell his house to bail out her family. And she certainly wouldn't cheat on her husband and then murder him in a fire." Hannah froze, the color draining from her face. Her eyes widened with a dawning, disbelieving horror as she stared at me. You too?" she whispered, her whole body starting to shake. "You were reborn too, weren't you?" She shook her head, as if trying to deny it. I should have known. I should have known. It was only in that moment that she finally understood that I remembered everything, just like she did. On the drive home, I told Ava's story. It was about a man who loved his wife more than anything. He believed that if he just gave her his whole heart, eventually she would come to love him back. But in the end, the man lost everything he had, including his life. His wife was the one who killed him. Then they were both reborn, sent back 10 years to the beginning. And in their second life, they both made very different choices. When I finished the story, my eyes were burning. I was about to say more, but Ava just squeezed my hand. "Honey," she said softly, "the past is the past. We can build a better future together." Ava's no fool. She could tell there was a complicated history between me and Hannah. That, combined with the uncanny success of my business, made it pretty clear that I seemed to know what the future held. I took a deep breath and looked her in the eyes. Ava, I never meant to hide anything from you. I just honestly didn't know how to explain it. But I promise you, my heart belongs completely to you now. I truly love you. The only reason I was hesitant to go public was because I was worried your fans would think I wasn't good enough for you. Can you forgive me for that? Ava just shook her head and smiled. Honey, I don't care about any of that. I only care about you. She didn't ask any more questions. Like she said, you can't change the past. But the future was ours to create. We took advantage of a break in our filming schedule to take a much-needed vacation. We turned off our phones and just got away from it all for a few days. The moment we got back, Louise called to tell me that the drama with Hannah had blown up online. Ava and I had kept our phones off the entire trip, but as soon as I logged back on, I saw what he meant. Someone had posted a video from the reunion online. Part of the buzz was about Ava's husband finally being revealed to the public. The other part was about completely dismantling Hannah's public image. Her carefully crafted persona as an enlightened, independent woman completely fell apart. The internet dug up everything, including the fact that she'd abandoned her own parents. Since she had so many brand deals, the companies started coming after her one by one, demanding she pay for violating her contracts. In just a few days, almost every penny she had earned was gone. Add to that Ethan's outstanding gambling debts, and it wasn't long before they both became public pariahs. Then Ava made the ultimate power move. She posted a photo of the two of us on her official Twitter account. The caption read, "To my amazing fans, here's the husband I've been hiding for 3 years. Finally decided to show him off. Please be nice, he's sensitive." Winky face. Her fans, who lovingly joke that she excels at everything except singing, even call themselves the tone deafs. Her post sent them into a frenzy. They were howling with laughter in the comments, and the likes poured in by the thousands. Ava's post pushed the whole story to a fever pitch, contrasting our happiness with Hannah's public implosion. Then, my assistant released a statement with evidence proving that Hannah and I had no relationship, and that I had personally rejected her business proposal. That was the final nail in the coffin for any shred of an innocent persona she had left. Her followers abandoned her in droves. Her perfect life, the one she had built with the advantage of her rebirth, was shattered. Her dream of becoming a mainstream celebrity was over. The talk shows she had appeared on were either postponed or re-edited to cut her out entirely. Fans of other celebrities she had worked with flooded social media, demanding their favorites distance themselves from her. No one wanted to be associated with her. Seeing Hannah backed into a corner like this, I felt a deep, satisfying sense of justice. After all, I was the one who had secretly arranged for those ironclad, outrageously expensive breach of contract clauses in her brand deals. She had murdered me in our past life. I was never going to just let that go. I thought that would be the last I ever saw of her, that she would finally disappear from my life. But a few days later, she was waiting for me outside my office building. She was gaunt, with dark, bruised-looking circles under her eyes. The moment she saw me, she started to fall to her knees. She looked completely broken. "James," she pleaded, "we were married for 10 years. We've known each other for almost 20. Can't you please, just this once, help me? I'm losing my mind. The debt collectors are hounding me every day, and my mother's trying to force me to marry some 60-year-old man, just so she can buy my brother a house. I'm only 27, she sobbed. How did my life get so messed up? I instinctively took a step back, putting some distance between us. All I felt was revulsion. Hannah, I said, my voice flat. When you were 30, you lived in a beautiful house, you drove a luxury car, and you spent every single day complaining about what a miserable, frumpy old housewife you were. From where I'm standing, that life looks a hell of a lot better than this one. But this is the life you chose, isn't it? You were willing to murder me for Ethan. Now you're just paying the price. Even with a second chance, you're still obsessed with him. Don't you realize that he was the one who arranged for you to sign those ruinous contracts? All the money you've lost over the years came out of your bank account, not his. He has nothing to do with it. You're the one in debt. Not him. So if you're looking for a savior, go find one. Go ask Ethan. Hannah's eyes widened in disbelief. That's impossible, she cried, her face a mask of shock. How could Ethan hurt me? He loves me. He only loves me. He said he was going out to raise money. Hannah, I said calmly, I'm guessing you haven't been able to reach him for a few days, have you? I didn't need to say anything else. She understood. There was no point in continuing the conversation. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove away. In my rearview mirror, Hannah's figure shrank until she was just a tiny speck that vanished down the road. The next time I heard anything about her, the core of this story is this. True rebirth isn't about returning to the past, but about consciously walking into the future. The direction of our lives isn't defined by how many do-overs we get, but by the choices we make in the present. It is the decision to let go of obsession and take responsibility, rather than to wallow in resentment and blame, that determines whether we find a new beginning or merely repeat a tragedy. The best life is never about getting a second chance. It's about living this one chance to the fullest.